Do you like Fire Emblem?
Miguel is Chrono because there is no way that Miguel is in that plaza under the bell of Lin with his daughter that is called Lina.
FRANKIE'S Lair.
Thank you, Eric, for being here. I've been a fan of you by a lot of years, so many years. So it's
really?
it's strange to speak to you right now like this because I've watched a lot of your videos years before to open my channel, my RPG channel. You were an inspiration.
Oh wow, really? That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, truly. I'm serious. You were an inspiration because in Italy there were not a lot of channels that spoke about RPGs and they just spoke about Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy, but no channel spoke all around about RPGs. And I grew up with all kinds of RPGs, not just Final Fantasy, because you know. Fantasy is the most famous, but there are a lot of good games that players did not know because marketing is everything in this world.
It is. Yeah, we have the same situation here in Mexico. There's barely any JRPG channels here, I think. And if there are, I don't know them.
So I wanted to ask you some questions since you spoke about being in Mexico with a lot of people that didn't know about RPGs. What was your first video game ever and how old were you?
Wow, okay. So the first video game I ever played was probably Super Mario Brothers. Me and my siblings, we went to my aunt's house and she had an NES that my cousins weren't using anymore. And she had these 3 cards, Skate or Die, Excite Bike, and the one with Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt, which is the North American release of that game, came together, bundled up with the NES. So that's the version most people are familiar with. So I'm pretty sure the very first video game we tried was precisely Super Mario Brothers, and I think I was like 5 years old. This was all the way back in 1990. So it must have been around that time when I played my first video game ever.
Oh, okay. Nice. My first video game ever, I think, was Street Fighter 2. I was five years old or so. So, what was your first RPG?
Okay, I have it right here. Let me get it. There we go. This is Final Fantasy Legend 2. I think in Europe it was called something else, Final Fantasy Adventure something. I don't know, but in North America they released this game as Final Fantasy Legend 2.
That is a saga.
When in reality this is Saga 2.
That's a saga, yes.
Yeah, we didn't know that back then, And the story is, I think I was like 13 years old, and I had my best friend in middle school. He had a Game Boy, I had my own Game Boy, and I had a bunch of regular games. And he said to me one day, "Man, you gotta try this game. It's like nothing I've ever seen. It plays like nothing. I don't even know what the hell is this." And I said, "Okay, yeah, lend it to me and let me borrow it, and I'll give it a try." And when I tried it, he was right. The game blew me away. I had no idea what I was playing. This was a game where I had been grown accustomed to games like Mario, right? Or Contra, or Street Fighter. Well, all those games that played in 2D and you just moved from the right to the left, shooting stuff or jumping on platforms, etc. And this game was all about, just this minuscule chibi character just moving around and getting into random encounters and turn-based battles, and what the hell was that? So, it was like nothing I ever seen before. However, a couple of weeks later, my friend needed the game back. So I gave the game back to him. I had gotten stuck in a boss battle that I couldn't defeat. So I never finished this game, but it was late in the game. So I gave the game back to him, and I never saw it again until many years later when I got this copy that I'm holding right now, which was like 3 years ago while I was in Canada. And back then I didn't know what an RPG was, We're talking about the mid-90s. Internet was barely there, available for people at home. I think first world countries, already had computers and internet in the mid-90s. We didn't in Mexico. We had computers, but no internet. I think Mexico was introduced to the internet until 1998. Okay, which was when I was like 13 years old. But you couldn't really look for information, online to find out what kind of game was this. So it wasn't until I got into Super Mario RPG some years later, already in the 2000s, when I noticed, the title of the game was Super Mario RPG, and I was like, what's that? What's RPG? And that's when I found out that was the genre, and I was like, oh, so that little game I played when I was a teenager, that's an RPG, and the rest is history.
Okay. Let me translate a bit for the audience.
Ok.
Praticamente lui ha detto che ha scoperto, un suo amico gli aveva prestato Final Fantasy Legends 2, che era un saga, quindi era un gioco molto difficile. It was a very difficult game. Era un gioco molto difficile e lui prima di allora aveva soltanto giocato roba come Super Mario, Street Fighter, cioè quello che abbiamo giocato tutti a quell'età lì. Quindi si è trovato questi personaggi piccoli che c'erano nei menu per attaccare quelle robe strane, ed è stato proprio colpito perché era un genere di gioco che non aveva mai giocato prima. Solo che poi non è riuscito a finirlo perché il suo amico gli ha chiesto il gioco indietro, e poi in un mercatino in Canada gli è capitato appunto di rivederlo lì il gioco, e se l'è ricomprato. Però lui non sapeva che si chiamassero RPG. Lui ha scoperto che si chiamavano perché in Messico non c'era internet fino al 1998 circa, più o meno come da noi, quindi insomma nel 1994-95 l'accesso a internet era fantascienza, e quindi lui ha scoperto con Super Mario RPG che questo genere si chiamava RPG. Prima non lo sapeva. Well, my first RPG actually it was Final Fantasy VII. And I bought it blind. I didn't know what the fuck was that game, because it had a white cover with the right Final Fantasy, and I just bought it because every journal in Italy just said Final Fantasy VII is the best game ever. You have to absolutely to buy it. And I was like 12 years old, so I just did what the journals told me to do.
Yeah.
And so I bought the game. Up to that point, I just played platforms like Sonic, Rayman, beaten up like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Tekken, Wipeout. So when I started to play Final Fantasy VII, I was sure that the game would end at the top of the Shinra building, freeing Iris from the evil president. And then I was sure that the game would end there, even because today you can reach that part in about 5 hours. But when I was 12 and I didn't speak English, so for me it was like reading Japanese. I just go blind in every house I see, just speak with every NPC was there, just random. And so I think I took about 20 hours to go to the top of the Shinra building. So for me, after 20 hours, the game was almost finished. When I discovered that the game started at that point, my world changed, and I decided that I would almost play only RPGs, because it's like living a new life. And
That's right.
I just wanted to share this episode with you. So in Mexico, when you started to play seriously RPGs, did your friends like RPGs? Did you try to convince them to play them? How was your experience into convincing your friends to try out this kind of games?
Yeah, it was pretty weird because most people in my school didn't know what the hell an RPG was. People knew Mario games, they knew fighting games like Street Fighter, they knew the classics and they knew the popular ones. But games like this, just it was pretty much an unknown genre. But around the PlayStation era, I think games like Final Fantasy VII, which you just mentioned, and Chrono Trigger, were the games that a lot of people started to get and started to play and understanding what the genre was. So there were, I don't know, just a very few people who knew what an RPG was, and maybe I could talk to them, but I was getting into more and more RPGs because eventually I got into Chrono Cross after Super Mario RPG, and people kind of knew Super Mario RPG, but they didn't know what the hell Chrono Cross was, and they were always like, does that game have anything to do with Chrono Trigger? And I was like, well, yeah, they're part of the same universe, but what I'm trying to say is that JRPGs were like extremely unknown here. And you could say that games like XENOGEARS, which is pretty well known nowadays, back then was a hidden gem. Like, and everybody knew Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, and that's it. They didn't know anything else. Persona? No, what the hell is that? XENOGEARS? Nope, never heard of it. Valkyrie Profile, Suikoden? No. So it was very hard for me to talk to somebody else about RPGs, and I had a hard time at the beginning. It wasn't until I got a PlayStation 2 that I started meeting more people who knew what an RPG was and knew some games, knew some Final Fantasy games, some Tales games, and eventually the genre kind of slowly became more popular here where I live. And when I started reselling games, which was like 13 years ago, so we're talking about 2009, most people in my business, the people I was making deals with, knew what an RPG was and knew some of the popular games. I mean, people already knew games like Tales of Symphonia, Fire Emblem, Final Fantasy Tactics, So they knew, at least they knew the surface of the genre. So it was around that time when I noticed that JRPGs had finally become popular here in Mexico.
I see. And if you had to mention just one JRPG that is your favorite of all times, just one, which is it?
I think you already know the answer to that question.
Maybe.
That's Chrono Cross.
Do you want to tell us why it's your favorite ever?
Sure. Well, I went to these. I knew Mario RPG, and when I played Super Mario RPG and I finished it, I went back to it and finished it a couple of times, in a row. And I was going to flea markets and to retail stores to try to find more games that were like it. But I didn't know exactly what to look for. I was asking about RPGs, and the employees didn't understand me or didn't know what the hell was going on. So one day I went to a flea market, and I got this game, Chrono Cross, but back then I just didn't know anything about it. We're talking about piracy here, pirated copies.
I know.
Copies.
In Italy too. Mexico and Italy are very alike about this this thing.
About piracy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a bunch of games, and since Chrono Cross, let me just share with you. Since Chrono Cross, is a game where the cover has two characters, right? These two. And I thought, you didn't have a back cover because, it was a pirated copy. So I didn't know what kind of game it was. All I wanted to do was to buy a game that I could play with my sister. She used to be into games back then. So what happened is that I watched this cover, I noticed it, and I said, oh, this looks like a game that I can play with my sister. It's probably going to be some kind of action game or beat 'em up. And when I took it home, and she wasn't home yet, so I tried it just so I could, get acquainted with the game and later explain to her the basics. And I started playing, and I was like, wow, wait, this is like Mario RPG, man. This is like Final Fantasy Legend 2. And I just stayed there and played for like 3 hours in a row. I lost time, completely lost time. And when my sister arrived, she was like, so what game did you get? Yeah, I got this other game. But yeah, I didn't even mention this game to her because it was a one-player game only. So the first 3 hours, I fell in love with the narrative, with the characters, with the story, the music. My man, have you played Chrono Cross?
Music is over the top. Mitsuda is the number one.
Yes. So man, I just fell in love with the game, and that's when I said, okay, so now I'm fully aware of what an RPG is. I know what I want to play. So just like you, all I wanted to play back then was RPGs. I was still a fan of survival horror games, and I was playing other genres as well constantly. But slowly I started getting more and more and more into RPGs. And then I got into Final Fantasy IX, Final Fantasy VII, all the Final Fantasy games on the PlayStation. I got into XENOGEARS, I got into The Legend of Dragoon, etc. So I became a die-hard RPG gamer since I was like 20 years old. So Chrono Cross is the game that changed my life. And I was always looking for a game that could make me feel the same, exactly the same, and some games came even close, like Final Fantasy VII, and later other RPGs that I played were highly emotional. But nothing came even close to Chrono Cross. And still today, 17 years later, I still haven't found a single game that makes me feel what Chrono Cross made me feel back then. So that's why it's my favorite game of all time.
I get you. I mean, the feeling is very personal. So we always review games, but you can review the graphic, you can review eventually the story, you can review the music, but the feelings that a game give you, it's only yours. And so I understand what you are saying. Even I too like Chrono Cross, and I can say that some feelings that the game has to offer are very unique. It's a kind of feeling that no game. Yes, it's pretty unique. Even if all the core story is given to you near the end. So I was a bit disappointed because I hoped to play a full sequel to Chrono Trigger.
Oh,
and it is not.
You played Chrono Trigger first.
Yes, and it is not a sequel to Chrono Trigger, but this is not the issue I had with the game. They put some links to Chrono Trigger, but I think the links to Chrono Trigger are not put there in the right way. I think they maybe should have gone with just telling a story about Serge and Kid without trying to link it to Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, look, that happened because the writer of Chrono Trigger and Cross, which is Masato Kato, what happened with Cross is precisely the reason why he quit Squaresoft. Because they told him that Chrono Cross had its own story and was barely connected to Trigger, and that's exactly what he wanted to do. And in fact, he didn't want the game to be called Chrono. I don't know if you know this, but between Chrono Trigger and Cross, there was this visual novel adventure called Radical Dreamers.
I know.
And that was supposed to be the brand new game. So Squaresoft came over to Masato Kato and said, "So we want you to write a sequel." And he said, I already have this story and these characters in this game, and I don't want to connect this game to Trigger. This game is its own thing. So all of this was just pretty much Squaresoft fucking up, their own vision about the game. So Masato Kato pretty much said, okay, so I have this story already. I'm going to try to connect it to Trigger as best as I can, and that's what happened. So the result was Cross. So Chrono Cross is a standalone game. I think it's a masterpiece, but as a sequel, which is not supposed to be, and this is something that Masato Kato said. He said this is not a sequel. This is not Chrono Trigger 2. This is Cross. It should have been called Radical Dreamers, but Squaresoft wanted to cash in to milk the name Chrono. So Chrono Cross was born the way it was. So that's why a lot of people who played Trigger first don't like Cross or complain about it or don't think it's a worthy sequel, because it was never supposed to be a sequel. It's its own game, and if people can play this game without connecting it to Trigger, I think they can get a much better experience and understanding of the story and characters of what Masato Kato wanted to tell the people. But I know where you're coming from. You're pretty much saying what many Chrono Trigger fans say, which is okay. I understand that if I play. Because I played Trigger, after I played Cross. So if I had played Chrono Trigger first and then I jump into this one in hopes of it being a sequel, I probably would have been disappointed like many of you guys were.
But
yeah, I mean, it was like that. It was done this way in such a convoluted way, and the connection was so vague and so out of place, because that was pretty much Squaresoft trying to force Chrono Trigger into Chrono Cross. So it's not really the director's fault, and the director of this game is Masato Kato. It's not really his fault. It's just Squaresoft didn't know what the hell they wanted to do with their Chrono IP.
I understand. I have read a lot of interviews with Masato Kato about Chrono Cross. Yeah. But when did you play the remaster?
Yes.
Okay. When I played the remaster, I played with the spirit you just said. It's its own story. It's not a sequel. But at a certain point, they put a ghost of little Chrono, little Marle, and little Luca, and this is what triggers me, because I still cannot find any sense in that part of the game. This is the eternal question. I did not understand at the time when I was 15, and I did not understand right now when I'm 37 years old, and I just told myself, okay, relax. This is just the story about Serge, about Kid. There is no Magus. There is Luca, but Luca is just a mentor to Kid, and then stop. But then you see Phantom Luca, Phantom Marle, Phantom Chrono. Why Chrono? Why Phantom Chrono? And then you see Miguel, the father of Lina, right in front of the Lin Bell in the plaza of Guardia. I mean, how is it possible that Miguel with red hair, the father of Lina is like Lin, the Princess Lin in Chrono Trigger, and you say that Miguel is Chrono. Miguel is Chrono because there is no way that Miguel is in that plaza under the bell of Lin with his daughter that is called Lina, and Lina has reddish hair, like if was the daughter of Marle and Chrono. And then Miguel is too strong. Miguel is a fisher in the lore of Chrono Cross. But Miguel is too strong. He cannot be so strong, a normal fisher. So what I thought is Miguel is the true Chrono in disguise, and Lina most probably could be the daughter of Chrono and Marle. But maybe Masato Kato cut it off. Maybe in the original plans, maybe Masato Kato really wanted Miguel to be Chrono, and then he cut it from the script because things happens. I don't know. What do you think about this theory?
It's an interesting theory. You know, I think I've read it before. You know, people saying that Miguel is actually some kind of version of Chrono. I don't know. You know, I think the writer Masato, he left everything open for fan speculation and interpretation. So precisely so people could do what you just did, to theorize, to try to come up with their own conclusion, and to try to explain things. Because I don't think you just told me that you've read several interviews. I have read some interviews as well, and I don't think he's never really properly explained the connections. Because he's always saying, "Oh, it's Chrono Cross is an alternative universe," and that's how he washes his hands, right? Oh, it's an alternative universe, another dimension, so I don't have to explain it. And it's true. That's how it is portrayed and explained in the game in Cross. You know, it is an alternative dimension and something not exactly directly connected to the first game. So actually, we're seeing a Luca, a Chrono, and a Marle from another dimension, another possibility, which was the main theme of Chrono Cross, to do that. I think it's a convoluted mess. The more we try to connect this game to Trigger, the more complex it becomes, the more nonsensical it becomes. And it's precisely because what I just told you, that I think Masato Kato just didn't like the idea of really connecting both games. And at the end, he was kind of like forced to do it. And maybe he didn't have enough time to come up with something that made a lot of sense. So yeah, the result was this story. You know, as a standalone story, I think it's amazing, but all of its connections to Trigger, I admit it, it's weird. It's just fucking weird.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Yeah. I think you are right. Okay, let's change the subject.
Okay.
Tell me the worst JRPGs you ever played. That you played for a bit, not 5 minutes. That you forced yourself to play.
Okay, well, definitely Time and Eternity. Time and Eternity on the PS3. I saw the game with a soundtrack included, sealed on a retail store for a long time, and nobody wanted to buy it because it was like $40 back then. And $40 back then it's pretty much like the equivalent of $80 nowadays, $80 US, which would be probably like 70 euros, I think, more or less, right?
Almost the dollar and euros are the same right now. So.
Oh, okay. Well, back then it was there was like a $5 difference, something like that. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is that nobody wanted to buy the game. It was the only copy there, and it just kept calling me, you know, like I really wanted to play the game because it looked interesting, because it was published by Nipponichi Software, by NIS of America. And I was curious, and I never bought it until one day I walked into the store and it was on sale. It was like $17. And I was like, man, so I'll get it. A PlayStation 3 RPG, you know, published by NIS and with a soundtrack included. So I bought it. And because I paid money for it, you know, I kind of forced myself to play it. Or more like I kind of forced myself to continue playing it, because when I first played it, the first 20 minutes were more than enough to notice that I had purchased a piece of shit. Those 20 minutes were like enough for me to say this game is garbage. And but I had paid money for it, and I was like, man, I have to continue playing it. So I kept, and I forced myself, and because I forced myself to play it, I got a headache. A real headache, you know.
But
my
the
head was
soundtrack,
hurting.
the soundtrack of that game is very, very good.
Really? Well, I never noticed that because I was so angry with the game. I just actually didn't care about the music at all. And all I remember was the battle system was just horrible. You know, these camera focusing on the shotgun while shooting. You know, it was just pretty bad, really, really bad. And I was like, man. So I quit playing it, and I was so angry and so upset that I really wanted to go back to the store and give the game back. And I was like, man, but okay, let's give it another chance. And I waited until the evening, and I played it again at night. And I think I completed an entire mission, and I beat a boss, and then went back to town, and blah, blah, blah. So let's just say that I probably played the game for like 3 or 4 hours, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I was like, man, this is garbage. I've played worse RPGs than Time and Eternity, but Time and Eternity is a 2011 game. I mean, it's not even 20 years old, and it's NIS America, Nipponichi Software. So I just felt, how am I supposed to compare this game to other really, really bad JRPGs from the early 90s? Those games kind of had an excuse because of the hardware limitations, but this one just did not have any excuse whatsoever to be this bad. It's trash. So yeah, that's probably the worst RPG ever.
Do you still have your copy?
Oh, no, I sold it. No way I was gonna keep that in my collection. Well, you gotta understand, when that happened, I wasn't a YouTuber. I was just, playing games just for the fuck of it. I wasn't a YouTuber. Had I known that I was going to be a YouTuber, and that the game will probably be kind of famous because of me, because of the memes, I probably would have kept the copy just to keep it, just to show it off sometimes. I still have this fucking piece of shit, but no, I don't. I sold the freaking game, and I have no regrets.
I see. Do I see behind you a copy of Wild Arms 5, and near it is Magna Carta? is near Wild Arms. Is that Magna Carta? Okay, my eye was. What do you think about Magna Carta?
Okay, so this is a Korean RPG. I didn't know that back then when I first played it. That was a long time ago when I got the PlayStation 2. Well, I think it's a great game with great ideas. It can be a bit overwhelming because it has a steep learning curve, and it's hard to get into it because it's a challenging game from the start. I mean, from your very first battles and boss battles, you start dying if you don't know what you're doing. But once you understand how to play the game and how to exploit some characters and how to use some characters, because this is a game where you have 3 party members during battle, and you can switch between them at any time on every turn. But sometimes you can just fight the whole battle with one character, right? And win the battle like that if you want to. So if you learn how to strategize in this game and when to switch to this other character and how to use this other character, it becomes a really, really fun game. I think this is an excellent game. It's no masterpiece. It has a lot of problems, but I think it's an excellent game.
But what did you thought about the final battle, the final boss battle?
I really liked it. I mean, I was expecting that final boss to be the final boss. I mean, are we gonna spoil the game?
But come on, it's an old game. You can spoil it. It's not a problem.
But it's an obscure game, and I'm not sure. Well, you guys watching right now, he's giving me permission to spoil the game.
Come on, it's not a problem. No one of my followers will ever play that. I guarantee. I guarantee.
Oh, come on! This is a great game. Well, I know it's kind of expensive nowadays, and I'm guessing this came out in Europe, and is it more expensive or more rare in Europe, in Italy?
I think I don't know if that game came out in Europe. I only bought US games up to PS2, PS1 and PS2. I only bought American games because a lot of JRPG never came out in Europe or came out too late. Like for example, Breath of Fire 3. Breath of Fire 3 came out like 2 years after the release date, so it was too late. No one in Europe played Breath of Fire 3. It looked too old when and I don't know if you ever seen the cover art for Breath of Fire 3 European version.
Yes, I have it actually. I have the European version.
Oh my god! Oh my god! That's the worst cover of a JRPG. The worst cover ever. I never ever. I cannot justify who approved a cover like that. I mean, they must have been drunk. That's not Nina. That's not Nina. That's a doll, a sex doll. Come on, look at her. It's a sex doll. It's not Nina. It's awful.
Yeah, I know, because
it's so
Nina has like purple clothes, I think, on Breath of Fire 3, right? Yeah, I don't know who this girl is. She's pretty damn sexy. Yeah.
The game is in 2D. The game is not in 3D. So why did they put a 3D angel sex doll on the cover? Why?
Because they wanted to appeal to a male audience, maybe.
I think that even if someone in Europe wanted to play that game, after watching that cover, they would drop the game. Did you play Breath of Fire 3 and 4?
Yes, I did.
But did you play them at the time or later?
No, I probably played them much later. By the time I started getting into JRPGs on the PlayStation 1, everybody already had the PlayStation 2. So while I was playing Chrono Cross for the first time, everybody was playing now Tales of Symphonia for the first time, or Baten Kaitos, or Breath of Fire 5, which is pretty bad, in my opinion. So yeah, I got in late, kind of late in playing to PlayStation RPGs. Yeah, most of these games came out in the year 2000, 1999. So I started playing RPGs in 2005. So it was pretty late.
Well, it's never too late. Did you prefer Breath of Fire 3 or Breath of Fire 4?
I prefer 4. I think it's kind of hard to decide. I think both games are great and they are the best Breath of Fire games in the series. But it's kind of hard to decide. But I think I'm gonna stay with 4. I think it's the better game for me personally.
Okay, well, Folu is a good character.
Yeah, that's the thing, that you can switch. I mean, you play as the good guys and then the bad guy at the same time for the entire game, and that was really original and interesting for me.
It was very, very rare, and by the way, you can. There is also an alternate ending. You can side with Folu. That was cool.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
That was cool. Do you want to tell us something about your point of view about XENOGEARS?
Well, I've sort of developed kind of an unpopular opinion about it, even though I love the game and I think it's great. And it's one of my personal favorite PS1 RPGs of all time. I don't think the game aged well. I think the camera sucks. It sucked back then when I first played it, and it sucks now. The camera is just terrible in XENOGEARS. And then you gotta deal with these. Some dungeons in some areas are so poorly designed and also ruined by the camera that just trying to find your way out of them or into them, it can be a pain in the ass because of the camera. And then you have the random encounters to deal with. And while I love the battle system in XENOGEARS, don't take me wrong, I think it's probably one of the best battle systems in the entire Xeno series. I prefer this battle system over the ones in Xenoblade Chronicles. I love those too, but I think the XENOGEARS turn-based battle system is one of the best, one of my favorites. But let's face it, it's kind of slow to create the combos, and kill your enemies. So getting into those random encounters over and over again in these horrible dungeons, yeah, it just didn't age well. So I think XENOGEARS.
On the technical side, you are right. We cannot say
technically.
We cannot say that a game that was made in '98 can compare to a game made in 2010. But about the story, did you? The best story ever written in a JRPG. Okay. Now I like. Now this is what I wanted to hear. Okay, about the story of XENOGEARS, it's I don't know which game can compare to XENOGEARS. No, there's been some attempts. I think Cross is one of them. It's one of my favorite stories ever written. I mean, if we leave aside the Chrono Trigger connections. There's been some great attempts of creating really, really well-written stories like this, but no. I mean, just XENOGEARS is the king of story writing in the genre for me. It's just such an amazing, incredibly well-written story. I don't care if people say it was rushed and the disc 2 was rushed and it's 80% story. I don't give a fuck. The story was so amazing in this game that I actually didn't care that disc 2 was rushed at all. I didn't even feel it. The only other option was to cut disc 2. So I think disc 2 is a benediction. Yeah, it is. I agree with that. The story was written by Tetsuya Takahashi and his wife, Soraya Saga. So it's got 2 writers. And I don't know if you knew this, but Masato Kato helped a little bit with the story in XENOGEARS. So you can pretty much say the story was written by 3 people, 3 of the most talented people of that time, which, it shows. You can tell it was written by geniuses. It's a great story. And the music, Mitsuda, Yasunori Mitsuda, man. Yeah, the music, you know what I'm talking about. I know. You said a good thing. XENOGEARS was wrote by Takahashi and Soraya Saga, and Kato did the script. But what I feel the new Takahashi games lacks is the presence of Soraya Saga. For example, did you play Xenoblade 3? Okay.
Yes, I did.
It's a good game overall, but I feel Takahashi alone lacks something that Soraya Saga have.
Well, all the Xenoblade Chronicles games were written by Tetsuya Takahashi and like 2 or 3 other guys. So, of course, they feel completely different, and you can feel Soraya Saga is not there anymore. But I don't know about what you're saying. It's only speculation, I have no idea if Soraya Saga was pretty much the soul of XENOGEARS. I don't know about that. It could be, but we will never know until we ask Takahashi himself. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a speculation. Obviously, I cannot know. But I have played Final Fantasy VI, and you for sure will know that Soraya Saga she did write the Edgar and Sabine backgrounds. The characters of Edgar and Sabine were written by Soraya Saga.
I didn't know that.
And it was said in some interviews. I'm sure you can find it. And by the way, if you think about Edgar and Sabine, you can see them in XENOGEARS thinking about Bart and Sigurd. They are very, very alike.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
And
cool.
and I think the heart Soraya Saga put in the story, in the background story of Edgar and Sabine when they flip the coin, when Sabine says Edgar he is not interested in the throne, and in XENOGEARS is almost the same. Sigurd is not interested in the throne, so he just discards his royal origins. He was not the official son of Roni, but he was anyway. He has anyway right to the throne, but he discarded that and just become the hand of his brother without telling his brother he is actually his brother. So it's very alike. And also in Xenosaga, I see this kind of sentiment of feeling put in the story. But then after the first Xenosaga, the first episode of Xenosaga, I've seen the lack of this sentiment, these feelings. And if you for sure will know that Soraya Saga stopped to write stories after Xenosaga 1. And Final Fantasy VI, XENOGEARS, and Xenosaga 1 have the feelings and sentiments I have never seen again in a Takahashi game after that.
Okay. I don't know what to say. I didn't even know that. I mean, I knew Soraya Saga didn't work on Xenosaga 2 and 3, but I didn't know that Final Fantasy VI thing. I didn't know she created those two characters and made those references that you noticed. That's pretty interesting.
Okay, just a thought. Anyway, okay. Now I have to ask this because some followers of mine told me, look, I have seen this video about Eric, and he doesn't. Okay. This is a bomb. Okay, you did a video telling that you absolutely cannot play. You never say you hate a game, absolutely. But you said you could not play Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre.
Oh, well, I think that's because, it's kind of unnerving for me to play a game where my characters depend on changing jobs. I don't know. I just couldn't get into that. I don't hate those games, don't worry. Yeah, like you said.
No, I know you don't hate them.
And Tactics Ogre, Tactics Ogre is a game I hugely respect because it's one of the most influential games of all time. Final Fantasy Tactics wouldn't exist without Tactics Ogre. But I just can't get into those games. But the last time I gave him a chance was a long time ago. Maybe I should just restart a new playthrough of at least Tactics Ogre. I feel like I kind of need to play Tactics Ogre first and then get into Final Fantasy Tactics. I know that's kind of weird. Most people usually did the other way around. They played Final Fantasy Tactics first and then jumped into Tactics Ogre.
I did too. First was Tactics. Final
Tactics
Fantasy
and then
Tactics.
Mm-hmm. So I think what I need to do is the opposite. Play Tactics Ogre first in order to understand certain things about Final Fantasy Tactics and then come back to it. But yeah, as of this moment, I'm not a fan of those games. Like I said, I made this video that on my second channel called Why I Don't Like Job Systems. And it's because of that, I'm just not really a fan of having to change my archer into a blue mage just to be able to progress with this mission or to beat this boss or enemy. I just don't like that. I want to train my mage as a mage from the start until the end. I love that. That's why I'm more of a fan of Fire Emblem than Final Fantasy Tactics. And curiously though, the majority of people that are fans of Fire Emblem are not fans of Final Fantasy Tactics, and vice versa. Do you like Fire Emblem?
I played almost all Fire Emblems. I didn't play the last one because I have
Three Houses.
Three Houses. I have it, but I still didn't play it. Anyway, yes, I played them all. I feel Fire Emblem is a very different tactical style. We can call Tactics Ogre and Final Fantasy Tactics Matsuno style, because Yasumi Matsuno is the director and the creator of Tactics Ogre Battle, yes. Before Ogre Battle. And then Tactics Ogre. And it's very difficult concept than Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem is more like Super Robot Wars. I don't know if you know Super Robot Wars.
Yes, I do.
The issue with Fire Emblem was that the first games were so hard, so difficult to not score any deaths, because the permadeath for a completionist it's a problem, because I had to start over a lot of missions. Maybe I was the last turn against the boss. One hit and the boss would be dead, and then the boss killed my most favorite character, and then what? There is anything you can do. You have to restart, or you have to use save states. I played some Fire Emblems on emulator, I admit it.
Yeah.
So I had to use save states, and there is no much sense for me into playing a game where I have to use a lot of save states. So Nintendo understood this problem and removed the permadeath, or not removed, put an option to disable it. And so I played the other Fire Emblem without the permadeath. And for me it lost a bit of its tactical style, tactical spirit, tactical soul, because if every character can die and then resurrect, you can just use glass cannon characters to go and kill whatever you find, and just keep the stronger ones to kill the boss. But this is not a strategy. So what I feel Matsuno games have more than Fire Emblem. First of all, I think it's the story, the plot, the overall plot, because Matsuno is a writer, is a great writer. And and I since I know you are too a writer, because I know you write a lot of books I did not read them, but I know you write a lot of books. So my advice to you is to try at least to play Tactics Ogre Reborn, the remaster, because
yes, I will.
Trust me. I understand that maybe that gameplay. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But the story Matsuno writes are very dark, very medieval style. He studied the story, the real story. So he put in his games a lot of episodes that he re-elaborated from true history. His plots are always so rich, so dark, so full of betrayal, so full of so cynical. The main characters start very childish, very the world is so good. I am noble. I am born in the family, in the rich family. Whoa! And then when he goes out, everyone points the finger to them, saying, "You noble, you fool noble. We are starving because of your family." And the main character says, I didn't do anything, so why are you angry? Okay, the Matsuno games are full of these things that I don't feel you can find them in games like Fire Emblem, which are more anime style, more just this. So try them.
I will. I definitely will try the remaster and have my final say in the game.
I know you are a huge ATLUS fan.
Yeah.
What's
here we go.
What's your most favorite ATLUS game?
If we're talking about a game that was 100% developed by ATLUS and ATLUS alone, I will have to pick probably Persona 3.
3?
Yes, 3.
Can you tell us why you like Persona 3? Which version?
Well, I first played the first version with PlayStation 2, and then sometime later I got the FES version. I played the PSP version many years later, but I never finished it. So the ones that I'm talking about are the PS2 versions, the originals. And I just didn't know any other game that was like it when I first played it. And that's a game that I played when it first came out. The game was released in 2006, and I think I played it a few months after its release. And I had never played any game like it before, with such an intense character development and character focus. You know, the story's great and all, it's interesting, but it's the classic characters fighting, characters belonging to a secret organization that fights demons. You know, it's every anime plot, right? But it was so rich in character and development, you know, I had never seen a game like that before. And the simulation elements, you know, going around school and dating your friends and going out with them and dating a girl. And I was like, it was just completely new to me. And at the beginning, when I started seeing those features in that game, I was like, man, what the fuck am I playing? But they got so addictive over time that I ended up really enjoying that. My one and only complaint with Persona 3 is the same complaint everybody has, that in these PS2 versions, you can't control your party members. And it's a pain in the ass. And this is the reason why Persona 3 is a game that I've always played on easy mode. So my characters don't fuck my battles for me.
What you just said is the reason for me I have tried Persona 3 2 times and dropped it 2 times. The first time it was the regular version, the vanilla version. Mm-hmm. The second time I was so cute to buy FES version.
Yes.
And then I dropped it. So I never played the PSP version, which is the one that will be remastered in 2023, I think. Because
and that's the version you need to play, because you can control your party members in that version.
And that issue is very huge issue, to not being able to control your party members. I cannot figure out even today how they could release a game that the EA could fuck you up so much. Even at the start of the game, because maybe your party member casts the same element magic on the monster and give them another turn, and then you are dead because the enemies keep doing 3, 4, 5 turns in row because the EA just keeps giving them 3 turns. So I cannot understand how could a developer do something like this.
I don't know either. That's why I always play the game on easy.
This is a good
point in playing for.
This is a good advice. And so, which is the one you didn't like about ATLUS games?
Okay, you're asking about my least favorite or the worst ATLUS game?
Least favorite.
Okay, so Persona, the first one. I hate that game, man.
Which version?
Man, that's enough. You asked me when we were talking about Time and Eternity, you asked me if I forced myself to play a game, right? And Persona 1 is a game that I actually forced myself to play. From the beginning, I noticed that it was just pretty bad, and I tried to get as far as I can.
But
as far as I could,
Which version?
Sorry?
Which version?
The PS1 version.
So the worst version ever.
Yeah, but the PSP version did not fix a couple of problems the original version has. The encounter rate is still insanely absurd, and well, the labyrinths look kind of the same. You're still navigating in first person in these horribly designed dungeons that I just don't like. Yes, the PSP version, the PSP remake is the best version to play of the first Persona game, but I still don't like it either. I don't like any version of that game.
But did you finish it?
No.
Okay, right.
No, I got really far in the PS1 version, really far, but I got to a point where I just couldn't take it anymore. I was like, no, man, no.
I tried the Persona 1 in the times Persona 1 was released. I played 30 minutes at most because it really was one of the worst experiences I had up to that moment of my life. I was, I think, 16 or 15, 16. But I never ever tried it again. I don't think I will. Yeah,
it's such a bad game, man. I mean, I understand the hardware limitations and what they were trying to do, because Persona 1 is an early game. I think it was developed in 1996 and published in 1997, something like that. So it was on the early days of the PlayStation, and they didn't have the best hardware capabilities. And ATLUS wasn't a rich company. I mean, it still kind of isn't. But I think we can say Persona 5 made ATLUS rich. But anyway, that's another conversation. Point is that back then, ATLUS was like a small company, So given the limitations they had and the budget they had, I understand why the game was made that way. But understanding why it was made that way doesn't mean that we're gonna give it a break. That we're gonna say, oh yeah, it's a good game. No, I'm sorry, ATLUS, it's bad. It's bad. So yeah.
Okay. Then let's speak about the revival of Wild Arms and Shadow Hearts. Have you heard?
Oh yeah, for sure. I noticed you were mentioned in the post where I was mentioned. Right, you were, didn't you, on the Kickstarter post? Yeah,
I was.
So that's awesome. So they reached out to you to give you the press kits and stuff.
No, I do these weekly RPG news recaps. As soon as I heard about the Kickstarter, I did a special episode telling everything about the Kickstarter campaign, about what this means, because it's like 15 years of void of these two games. Wild Arms is dead after XF, which I actually didn't like. So we could say the last Wild Arms is 5, and Shadow Hearts it was born as indie game just when Kikuta, the composer of Mana, Secret of Mana, left Square and created his company Seknot, and then he made Kudelka. Kudelka was almost an indie game in the times of PS1 games, so it was like a miracle. And Kikuta did write the music, but he was also the game director. So it's not easy. It's not easy. And after Kudelka, which was a good game, but with its own problems, it was not so easy to play, so good to play. But then they made the Shadow Hearts. It was almost a PS1 game ported on PS2. So we had games like Final Fantasy X that was technically a monster. It was one of the most incredible games ever released on PS2. Games like Shadow Hearts are made no more. Even Persona is not so deep as Shadow Hearts, I think.
Well, I think the only one in the Persona series that's just as deep as Shadow Hearts is actually Persona 3. You've never finished the game. Maybe one day you will. And you'll notice what I'm talking about. Persona 3 is one of those games you have to finish to understand why it's so beloved, because the majority of people who play Persona 3 and don't finish the game and then complain about it notice that, well, these people are the very same ones that just can't bring themselves to understand why it's such a big game and why the game has a lot of fans. And they need to finish the game to understand that. And I think it's the same case with Shadow Hearts. I don't think Shadow Hearts got the appreciation it deserved back then, especially in storytelling, precisely because a lot of people just didn't finish the game because they bought it when Final Fantasy X was out. And Final Fantasy X, well, it was a AAA game, had better graphics, better whatever. And they played Shadow Hearts in the first one and said, oh yeah, fuck this game, Final Fantasy X is better and blah, blah, blah. To me, Shadow Hearts is far superior than Final Fantasy X in almost everything. And I was also kind of sad to know that the series had died. I know why it died. I mean, that third game from the New World was, while still a great game, it just felt completely different.
Yeah.
And if I ever get to interview the developer who is now working on Penny Bluff, I'll probably ask him that, if he had anything to do with the third game and what did he feel about it. I'd like to know, why everything happened.
I can answer for you because he told this in an interview. I don't remember which interview, but he said that after Shadow Hearts 1, the higher ups started tell him to do more comic games because no one wanted so dark, so horror style games. So he did.
Exactly.
He put a lot of comic scenes in Shadow Hearts 2. After Shadow Hearts 2, after Shadow Hearts 2, the higher ups came back to him, saying him, "See, we told you that Shadow Hearts needed to be more comic, and look, we have sold a lot, and so the third game needs to be even more comic." But they didn't understand that Shadow Hearts 2 sold very well because the comic relief was scaled. It was not a comic game. It was still an horror game.
Shadow Hearts, I think Covenant sold a lot because they put an overly hot, sexualized female character in the cover. Come on, Karen, she looks freaking hot, man. I mean, they sold a lot because they put her there. Let's face it.
You could be right, even if you have to know that after Shadow Hearts 1 they made the Shadow Hearts 2 in Japanese, and they did not announce it was coming to US. They put Roguely 1 year after they announced Shadow Hearts 2. I was desperate. I was so desperate that I bought the Japanese limited edition of Shadow Hearts 2, which has Yuri on the cover, and I was so happy with Yuri on the cover. I obviously have the American version, which has Karin. I know Karin is hot. Is very, very hot. I've started to play it again some days ago, and I have to agree. Karin is hot. Is probably the hottest girl in the JRPG on PS2. Yes, I cannot stop to watch her. She is beautiful. You are right.
Yeah.
You are right, but I don't think this is the only reason they sold a lot of copies of Shadow Hearts 2. And then we had to play Shadow Hearts 3. That was totally different from Shadow Hearts 2, with a main character that... Did you watch Dragon Ball GT?
Yes.
Okay, the main character of Shadow Hearts 3 felt like Child Goku from Dragon Ball GT. You knew that he had it in himself. We still had Yuri in our hearts, and Shadow Hearts 2 too. It finish with a bad ending, even if it links back to this is pretty official, because it was said by the writer in an interview that the bad ending in Shadow Hearts 2 links back to the good ending in Shadow Hearts 1.
I played Shadow Hearts from the New World. That game was my first Shadow Hearts.
Oh my god. So it was good for you. You liked it.
It was, yes, I liked it. I didn't think it was one of the best games on the 2, but I was alright. And then years later I got into Shadow Hearts 1 and 2.
But I think you did the good thing, because Shadow Hearts 3, it's a good game. And if you play it first, you don't think about Yuri. You just play. I mean, a lot of characters from Shadow Hearts 3 are really, really fun. The American Ninja. Do you remember the American Ninja?
Yes, I do.
It was, and there was also the Marachi. Am I wrong? I remember
Ricardo.
a Marachi guy. Ricardo, yeah. I don't remember anything else, if not Ricardo, the American Ninja, and the fact that the Garland, what was his name? The protagonist, the main character, Garland. How was he?
Yeah, Johnny Garland. Yeah.
Garland, yeah. I mean Garland, like the bad guy in Final Fantasy 1. It was it cannot be a coincidence. I think it was not a coincidence. So you had that guy that was very, very fun. He did a lot of humor. I don't remember anything else.
Oh well, you tell me you've forgotten about Shania?
The girl that did fusions. I remember
the girl.
I remember there was a girl. Was she South American, Indian?
Yes.
I remember she had the elemental fusions, but I don't remember anymore. Yeah. I don't think I liked her very much. I mean, she was. I mean, yes. Most probably she was hot, but I didn't care about her because I kept thinking about Alice and Karin.
Shania was hot, but she was a bitch.
How they could do something like From the New Worlds after Shadow Hearts 2, like doing Final Fantasy 15.
10 and 10-2.
10-2, but 10-2 had a nice battle system. Yes, the story was... Oh, come on, you have jobs. You hate jobs. You hate jobs. The jump
Exactly.
system wasn't very bad, but Evil Tidus was something like so random. The most random things ever.
Tidus is evil in that game. I don't think I ever played Final Fantasy X-2 for more than 1 hour. That's it.
It's not Tidus. It's a guy that resembles Tidus.
Resemble? Oh, okay.
And he is very evil, and he loves a girl that resembles Yuna.
Oh, gotcha.
But in
That's
the
a
past,
great plot.
in the past, and he is a ghost. He is a ghost of Tidus, but not the Tidus we know. And then if you did every single subquest, which means playing it like for most than 100 hours, doing grinding and fetch quests, you unlocked the true ending. In the true ending, Tidus did return to life. The true Tidus.
Oh, yeah, I knew that.
But it was so random that it didn't make sense, because
Of course.
the ending of
That's a
Final
bad
Fantasy,
game.
the ending of Final Fantasy X, I think is the best, one of the best endings of all Final Fantasy games. It had to stay like that. There was no reason to do a sequel.
Well, anyway, going back to Shadow Hearts, I think it's great that the developers are coming back with this new project, because it was about time. Wild Arms is kind of weird. You know, I'm going to interview Akifumi Kaneko, the creator. I want to ask him about Wild Arms 5, because he wasn't involved in that game, and then what happened later, and if he had anything to do with the mobile game called A Million Memories. I never played the game, but I know it came out a few years ago, and then the server shut down because it was just kind of bad. So I don't think it had anything to do with those games, but I still want to ask him those questions. But Wild Arms is kind of weird. It's kind of different. It's another topic, but Shadow Hearts, I'm glad it's coming back, because we hadn't seen anything for like a long time. Like you mentioned, you know, I think the last game from the New World came out in 2007, maybe. So it's been over 15 years since the last Shadow Hearts game, and I mean, seriously, this is what needed to happen. So the series will come back, and with a different name, no less. Now it's going to be called Penny Blood, which is a great name. I love that name. And but to us fans of Shadow Hearts, it's going to be Shadow Hearts 4, right? I mean, like a real sequel. The sequel we've been waiting for since forever. And from what I saw in the trailers, this Penny Blood character, the main character, you know, he looks a little bit like Yuri. It looks like it's going to be, you know, that kind of character. The girl looks different. She doesn't look like Alice at all. She looks like the other girl in the first Shadow Hearts, the spy, right?
Yeah.
A little bit like that.
Yeah.
And that's also really interesting. You know, I can't wait to play that game. We're gonna have to wait like 3 years for the development to end.
4.
That's a long wait.
I'd say 4.
Or yeah, I mean, it's gonna take a long time. So hopefully we will still be hyped up when that happens. And well, that's all I have. That's all I wanted to say. I gotta go now.
Okay,
Sorry.
man. Okay, no problem. We are talking by almost 2 hours. So I deeply thank you for having been here with us. It was an honor. I will put this video on YouTube. I will tag you in the video if you want to write a comment. I will stick it as the first comment, so everyone will say you something nice. I think every person that was in the chat. I don't know if you did read the chat.
I've been reading the chat.
They told you a lot of nice things, because
Thank you, everybody.
a lot of my followers do follow you too. Even before
awesome.
Following me, they did follow you.
Oh, really?
Some of them dubbed me the Italian Eric Landon. I'm not the Italian Eric Landon, but this means you're now very well known in Italy too. So Eric, thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. It was my honor to having me here. Thanks for having me on, and I had a great time. See you next time.
See you next time. See you next time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.